So I want you to think for a second about, well, the hidden pieces of your life.
Oh, we're diving right in.
Yeah, we are. Those quiet, locked away thoughts or maybe actions or memories that you carry around with you like every single day.
Right.
You might assume you don't actually have that many. Maybe, I don't know, one or two big ones and a few minor white lies. But the data tells a completely different, frankly, staggering story.
Hmm.
According to research from Columbia University, the average person, and yes, that includes you listening to this deep dive right now, is carrying about 13 secrets at this very moment.
13. And I think the aspect of that statistic that completely, changes the paradigm is the isolation factor.
Yeah.
Because of those 13 secrets, the Columbia researchers found that on average, 5 of them have never been told to a single living soul.
Wow.
Yeah, they exist entirely within the vacuum of one person's mind.
5 entire realities that belong exclusively to you. That's heavy.
It really is.
So today we are taking a deep dive into the psychology of secrecy. And our mission here is to decode the true psychological and physical cost of those invisible burdens you're carrying and figure out how to find actual relief.
Because we have a really fascinating stack of sources to figure this out today.
We do. We're looking at clinical mental health perspectives from ReachLink. We've got relationship authenticity studies from the Kuros Institute and the University of Cape Town. And like I mentioned, that foundational Columbia University research on the process model of having and keeping secrets.
Right. And, we tend to view secrets as passive pieces of information, like a fact in a file cabinet.
Exactly, just sitting there.
But these studies reveal them to be highly active, volatile processes. They profoundly alter our biology, our cognitive bandwidth, and really the whole architecture of our relationships.
I mean, I always assumed the absolute hardest part of having a secret was the act of hiding it.
Oh, sure. The poker face.
Right. We all have that cinematic image of sitting at a dinner party, the uncomfortable topic comes up, and you just have to, put on your best face, you're monitoring your words, actively deflecting, maybe even lying.
Yeah, doing the dance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the research points to a much more exhausting, invisible threat that happens when you are completely alone.
Yeah, the social interactions, those active moments of concealment, they actually make up a surprisingly small fraction of the distress a secret causes.
Really?
Yeah. The real damage, the chronic wear and tear, is inflicted during your solitary moments.
Reading through the clinical data from ReachLink, they offer an analogy that immediately clicked for me. Having a secret is, it's like having a poorly coded background app running constantly on your smartphone.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Because you might not have the app open on your screen. Your phone might just be sitting in your pocket while you go about your day.
Mm-hmm.
But that app is pinging the server every 3 seconds.
Tracking location data, yeah.
Yeah. It is chewing through your battery and your RAM. And when you have a secret, it's draining your cognitive battery in the exact same way.
It really is.
It's hijacking the processing power you need for problem solving or focus and creative thinking. You end up feeling utterly exhausted, and you don't even consciously know why.
Well, because your brain has a finite amount of processing power, right?
Exactly.
And to understand why the brain allocates so many resources to that background app, we have to look at the emotional core of the secret itself, specifically the difference between guilt and shame.
Okay, let's break that down.
Because this dynamic is what drives the shame-secrecy cycle.
Let me try to parse the difference here, because we often use those words interchangeably. Like if I feel guilty, I'm focusing on a specific behavior, right?
Yes, exactly.
My internal monologue is, I did a bad thing. It's tied to an action I took, which means I can theoretically apologize or make amends for it.
Right, it's external in a way.
But shame feels like a completely different animal. Shame attacks the foundation. Shame says, I am a bad person.
That is the core mechanism right there. When people keep things hidden because they feel ashamed, the very act of hiding it physically and psychologically reinforces their belief that they are fundamentally flawed.
Man, that's rough.
It is. The internal logic basically becomes, I have to hide this because if people knew this true thing about me, they would be disgusted. They would reject me.
Which just creates a powerful self-sustaining isolation loop.
Totally.
Which means because you're isolated, because you are terrified of rejection, you can't reality check this information with anyone else.
No, you're stuck with it.
And the Columbia researchers describe how the brain treats a secret as unfinished business. Since you aren't getting outside perspectives, your mind involuntarily wanders back to the secret to try and, resolve it.
And this is the phenomenon of passive rumination.
Yeah.
Because the information is sequestered, your amygdala, the emotional processing center of your brain, just loops the narrative over and
Trying
over,
to find an ending.
trying to find a resolution that just doesn't exist. It's this constant passive rumination that drives the severe distress. I mean, it causes random spikes in anxiety while you're just washing the dishes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it causes the massive sleep disruption associated with secrecy.
It's that moment your head hits the pillow.
Mm.
The distractions of the day fade away, and that background app suddenly maximizes on your screen, taking up all your mental bandwidth.
Yes.
It feels like a software loop stuck at 99%.
And because that loop is so painful, we have to invent narratives to justify why we are enduring it.
Right.
Which leads us to one of the most common and really most destructive justifications people use for keeping secrets from the people closest to them.
The classic "I'm doing this to protect them" defense.
Oh, we see this all the time.
We convince ourselves that we are absorbing this agonizing internal battery drain as like an act of noble sacrifice
Yeah.
to maintain peace in our relationships.
Right, like you're the martyr.
Yeah. We think we are building a protective shield around our partner or our family.
But the data reveals we are actually building a wall. It is entirely the illusion of protection.
I want to push back on this, though, because, I mean, life is complicated and sometimes complete transparency just seems destructive.
Okay, I hear that.
Aren't some secrets kept purely to avoid messy, unnecessary conflicts?
Yeah.
Let's say I make a minor financial mistake, like I overspend on a hobby and I cover it up.
Sure.
Or maybe I hold a really controversial opinion about my partner's family that would just break their heart if they knew.
A very common scenario, yeah.
If I keep that to myself just to keep the harmony in my marriage, isn't that sometimes the pragmatic, mature choice?
Well, the research from the Kudos Institute and Columbia University explicitly challenges that notion.
Really? Even for the small stuff?
Even then, even if a secret is kept with the absolute best of intentions to avoid a fight, spare someone's feelings, whatever, it systematically destroys a psychological state called relationship authenticity.
Okay, let me see if I grasp how relationship authenticity works in this context. It's like we're playing a game of chess, but I've secretly removed a row of pieces from the board without telling you.
That's a great visual.
So we are no longer playing the same game. The relationship isn't grounded in a shared reality anymore.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. When you keep a significant secret, you are subtly but permanently altering the power dynamic.
Because I have the info and you don't.
Right.
Yeah.
You have all the information, they do not. You are effectively forcing the other person to live inside a false narrative.
Yeah.
And internally, the secret keeper begins to feel deeply inauthentic.
Oh, I bet.
You are constantly monitoring your speech. You are performing a slightly redacted version of yourself every single day.
You're acting a part in a play that the other person doesn't even know they've been cast in.
Exactly. And the toll this takes is distinctly bidirectional.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the partner, even if they lack any tangible evidence, even if they have absolutely no idea what the secret is, they often sense the secret keeper pulling away.
Like an instinct.
Yeah, they feel the micro-hesitations in emotional communication. They register the distance. And because they don't know the cause, they frequently assume they are the problem.
Which injects a massive amount of relational anxiety into the bond.
Huge amounts.
It's fascinating how the emotional distance manifests, but man, the physical toll is what completely blew my mind in the ReachLink clinical data.
Oh, the physiological impact is wild.
Right. The human body does not differentiate between emotional threats and physical threats.
No, it doesn't.
Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between I'm hiding a secret second bank account and I'm hiding from a predator in the woods.
Exactly. You are triggering your sympathetic nervous system, those ancient alarm bells.
Yeah.
When you carry a heavy burden of secrecy, your body is locked in a state of heightened chronic alertness. You are perpetually braced for the threat of exposure.
Which means you're perpetually braced for a fight-or-flight response. So your cortisol levels, your primary stress hormones, are just continuously flooding your system. The ReachLink data outlines how this chronic state elevates your baseline blood pressure.
Yep.
It disrupts your heart rate variability. It literally suppresses your immune system. You aren't just feeling sad. The secret physically makes you sick.
It takes a very real, tangible toll.
You develop tension headaches, severe digestive issues, chronic muscle pain. I mean, you are actively degrading your own cellular health to protect a relationship that you are simultaneously alienating yourself from. It is a profound, tragic paradox.
It really is. The very mechanism you are deploying to save the connection is the mechanism dismantling your health and the connection at the same time.
Wow. So if the isolation of keeping a secret damages both your biology and your closest bonds, the natural antidote has to be letting it out. We need to look at how the heavy burden of secrecy contrasts with the actual mechanical relief of disclosure.
And the relief is almost instantaneous when we look at the cognitive mechanics.
Because sharing a secret immediately terminates that cognitive monitoring process we discussed earlier, right?
Right.
Your brain no longer has to expend processing power calculating what might slip out in conversation. You finally force quit the background app.
Exactly.
The intrusive thoughts quiet down because you've broken the rumination loop.
The secret is no longer unfinished business. It has entered the physical, social world. And what's truly remarkable is how this disclosure impacts our bonds with others.
Tell me about the University of Cape Town study, because that was fascinating.
Yeah, so their qualitative study explored the lived experiences of people who finally disclosed massive, life-altering secrets.
The Cape Town study is incredibly illuminating here. They documented cases where individuals revealed secrets that directly violated their family's core expectations.
The highest stakes possible.
We are talking about revealing a hidden aspect of their identity, or a secret relationship, or a deep religious doubt in a strict household. And initially, it caused an absolute explosion.
Oh, of course.
Extreme tension, anger, broken trust. It played out as the exact nightmare scenario the secret keeper was so terrified of.
And if the study had stopped at week 1, the conclusion would be that disclosure is a total disaster.
Right.
But they tracked the long-term outcomes over months and years. Eventually, by shattering that false narrative and forcing total transparency, the family dynamics were forced to rebuild on an actual foundation of truth.
A real foundation.
Right. The secret keeper finally felt authentic. The family was interacting with the real person, not an avatar, and the bond ultimately became deeper and far more resilient.
So disclosure, even when it causes acute short-term pain, acts as a crucible for profound personal growth.
It absolutely does.
It also prompts a reciprocal reaction. When you take the terrifying risk of being vulnerable and disclosing a deep truth, it subconsciously signals to the other person that it is safe for them to drop their armor too.
Yes.
It opens the floodgates for deep mutual closeness.
It does, but, and this is a big but, this introduces a very dangerous variable.
Okay, what's that?
If the goal is relief and connection, the nature of the disclosure itself is paramount. There is a crucial psychological distinction we need to make here. Simply venting your feelings, the psychological concept of catharsis, isn't actually very helpful.
Wait, really? Because I think most of us assume getting it off our chest is the entire point. You yell it out, you cry, and you feel better.
Right, but just getting it off your chest can actually backfire, leaving you feeling worse if that is the only step you take.
How so?
If you just verbally dump a secret and walk away, you often just stir up all the negative emotions associated with it without resolving anything. The literature indicates that true healing requires cognitive processing, or what psychologists call meaning-making.
Oh, interesting. So if I'm understanding the underlying mechanics of this, it's about forcing the brain to change how it stores the information.
Exactly.
If I just yell my secret into the void, I'm just feeding the emotional fire in my amygdala.
Yeah.
But if I have to structure this secret as a coherent narrative to explain it to you, I'm forcing my prefrontal cortex, the logical, organizing part of my brain, to take over.
Yes, beautifully put.
I'm moving the secret from the panic center to the processing center.
That is the exact neurological shift. You are sharing the secret to gain a new perspective, to contextualize your actions, and to figure out how to integrate this truth into your life moving forward.
Building a framework around the raw emotion.
Right. You are building a framework, but that level of meaning-making requires a very specific type of social interaction.
Which means the person listening to you becomes the most critical variable in this entire equation.
Absolutely.
Because true relief requires gaining new insight and meaning. You absolutely cannot just blurt your secret out to the first polite person you see.
No, please don't do that.
The success of the disclosure depends almost entirely on the specific psychological qualities of your confidant.
You have to choose the right vault.
I look at choosing a confidant like picking a spotter at the gym when you're about to lift a terrifying amount of weight.
I love this analogy.
You do not just ask the friendliest person in the room. You need someone who is physically and mentally strong enough to help you carry the weight if your arms give out.
Right.
You not want someone who is going to panic, someone who is going to critique your form while the bar is hovering over your neck.
Oh, that's the
Or
worst.
worst of all, someone who gets overwhelmed and drops the weight right back on your chest.
Exactly. Let's apply the research from Sleepian and Kirby to that gym spotter analogy, because they built a precise psychological profile of the ideal confidant.
Let's hear it.
Most people intuitively seek out someone who is highly polite, friendly, or enthusiastic.
Sure, you want someone nice.
But the data shows those traits do not correlate with a successful disclosure.
Really?
Yeah. To actually achieve meaning making, you need someone who embodies 3 specific traits. They must be compassionate, they must be empathetic, and crucially, they must be assertive.
Assertive. That's the one that really caught my attention. I mean, compassion and empathy make total sense. You want someone who can feel the weight of what you're carrying. But why assertive?
Because an assertive person has the fortitude to actually help you process the trauma. Think about a highly polite person. Politeness is often about maintaining social comfort.
Keeping things smooth.
Right. If you drop a devastating secret on a purely polite person, they might just nod, say, wow, that's crazy, and quickly change the subject to relieve their own discomfort.
Leaving you holding the weight alone.
Exactly. An assertive, empathetic person will step into the discomfort with you. They will ask probing, difficult questions. They will challenge your assumptions and actively help you construct that new meaning. They actually help you lift the bar.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And the ReachLink framework actually provides a confidant checklist and highlights several major red flags to watch out for.
Yes, very practical advice.
If you are sitting on a secret right now and agonizing over who to tell, you need to run your potential confidants through this filter. First, evaluate their track record. Have they consistently kept sensitive information private in the past?
Crucial step 1.
Right. And do they regulate their own emotions well, or do they fly off the handle and make everything about themselves when they get stressed?
You also need to look for a demonstrated history of non-judgment. When controversial or difficult topics come up in casual conversation, do they respond with curiosity or do they immediately default to harsh criticism?
That's a great test.
It is your best indicator of how they will receive your deep vulnerability.
And the red flags are just as vital to recognize. The expert consensus here is unambiguous. Do not choose someone who has a direct stake in the outcome of the secret.
No, absolutely not.
If your secret drastically affects their life or their social standing, their biological imperative will be to react defensively, not supportively.
And you also must avoid anyone with a known history of gossiping. If they eagerly share other people's deeply held secrets with you, it is a virtual certainty they will use your secret as social currency with someone else.
That's just a hard rule.
Yes. And finally, you must avoid structural power imbalances. Do not disclose deeply personal vulnerabilities to a boss, a landlord, or anyone who holds systemic power over your livelihood or safety.
The goal is to find an objective, emotionally regulated, assertive ally. We've covered a tremendous amount of psychological and biological ground today.
We really have. We have moved from the internal microscopic burden to the external mechanics of release.
To recap the architecture of what we've learned today, we discovered that secrets aren't just dormant facts in a mental file cabinet. They act as active biological stressors, draining your cognitive energy through the endless repetitive loop of passive rumination.
The background app.
Exactly. And we learned that hiding things to protect our relationships actually erodes the authentic foundation of those bonds, creating false narratives and plunging your nervous system into a state of chronic sickness-inducing stress.
Yeah.
But by identifying an empathetic, objective, and assertive confidant, you can trade the toxic burden of isolation for the profound relief of connection and cognitive meaning-making.
It is a rigorously tested roadmap for reclaiming your mental bandwidth and restoring your physical health.
It is. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a completely new angle on this topic.
Oh, a plot twist.
A plot twist for you to explore and mull over on your own. We've spent our entire time today analyzing the heavy, damaging weight of secrets. But what about positive secrets?
The psychological bright side of concealment.
Yes. Research published by the American Psychological Association looked at what happens to our brains and bodies when we keep a positive secret. Imagine you are planning an intricate surprise party for your best friend. Or you've bought a ring and you are secretly planning a marriage proposal.
Right, highly stressful, technically.
Right. You are still actively concealing information. You are still constantly monitoring your speech to make sure you don't slip up. But it turns out Keeping a positive secret doesn't drain your cognitive battery at all.
The biological response is entirely inverted. The research shows it creates an energizing effect.
It gives you an isolated, protected space to privately savor the joy. Every time your mind involuntarily wanders to the secret, instead of feeling the crushing weight of shame and isolation, you get a hit of anticipation.
You get a dopamine hit, yeah.
You get to imagine the thrill of the reveal. It is a completely different neurological experience.
Which perfectly underscores our central thesis, really. It reframes the entire mechanism of secrecy. It is not the act of hiding information that destroys us. It is the presence of shame.
So as you go about your day-to-day and you think about those hidden pieces of your life, consider this. While a secret born of shame is a heavy weight that will eventually grind down your mind and your body, a secret born of joy might just be a gift you get to unwrap twice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.